Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. Hopping on today to tell you that you can leave your job. This is a radical concept, I know, but you get to leave your job when you feel the time is right. And the reason I want to talk about this today is that for some reason, we have all of these rules and regulations out there in our heads about how long we have to stay in a job, what is expected of us to stay, like how long we need to stay, what's going to look good on paper. We have all of these thoughts, these rules, these expectations. And the truth is, all of it is made up. We get them from different people, from LinkedIn, we get them from people who mean well, telling us how long we should stay at a job, when we should go, like what is appropriate. And it is literally made up. It's like actually making no sense. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I was in touch with someone that I formerly coached, and they moved to a new job, and I guess they've been there about 4 months, not really loving it. And in actual fact, the job's out of alignment with some of their core values. So they really love collaboration, and this place is not offering collaboration. So that's a huge problem. That's going to make the job very difficult. So they were wondering, how long they need to stay at a job before they leave. And I'm not saying to job hop, although I'm going to talk about that because I have definitely job hopped. I have bounced around. And you know what? I'm still employable. I still have work. I've made a living for myself. But I'm not going to tell you that's what you should be doing, because I get that it can be something challenging to deal with, and I'm going to talk about how I have dealt with it. But this person was emailing me and saying, they were worried about, leaving or like thinking about leaving. Well, I first of all had to remind them that if they really don't like the job, they can leave. You have permission to leave. In fact, you don't need anyone's permission to leave. And as a sidebar, I do know how hard it is to find a job right now in Canada. There is stuff going on, man. There is stuff going on. But aside from that, not even getting to that point, you have to allow yourself to want to leave a job. You have to give yourself permission to make a move if you feel that the job you're in is not right for you, or if you hate it. Staying at a job you hate is like wearing Spanx to a Zoom meeting. Makes no sense at all. It's just unnecessary pain. So when I mentioned to this person, you can leave, they wrote back that, well, shouldn't I stay at a job for 4 years? And had I been drinking a cup of coffee, I would have spit it out like they do in the movies in those dramatic scenes, because I have never heard 4 years. I have heard stay at a job a year. I've even heard stay at a job for 2 years, again, from all these random sources, just people talking about what these rules should be. I've never ever heard 4 years. So I got over the shock. And then it just made me really think, wow, we really do come up with this playbook, this rule book that we need to follow with our career. And so, no, you don't have to stay at a job 4 years. And you don't even have to stay at a job, 6 months if you don't want to. And how we're explaining the gaps in our resume or moving around, I'll dive into that. And you may want to go back to episode 30, because I do talk about navigating multiple job interviews, job hopping, when you have to leave a job quickly and you don't like it. I talk about a woman who had to leave her job after 12 days of being there. So you might want to go back to that episode. But there is, no playbook. And this idea that we have to stay and suffer through the pain so we look good on paper is ultimately what I'm hearing when I hear that. What are people going to think? People are going to think I'm flaky. People are going to think I'm unaccountable, that I'm just not dependable, that, I'm not going to do a good job. Like, we have all these ideas. So yes, I want to talk about this. You could be perceived as a flight risk, someone who will leave a job quickly if you're doing this over and over and over and over again. Now, most people stay in jobs for a certain amount of time. Like, they have some tenure, some track record behind them. So leaving a job, like if you have one blip on your resume where you're leaving after 4 or 5, 6 months, that's not going to be seen as a red flag. You can really just say that this, job wasn't right for me. In this case, the person wasn't able to find collaboration in their role, or they currently can't find collaboration. So it's okay to say in a job interview, I'm looking for a company or a position where I can really engage in more collaboration. I don't want to work in a silo. That's completely reasonable. And if that's what's going to make you happy in a job and that's what you're looking for, then you have every right to go for that and try and find it. And sometimes we go into a job thinking we're going to find it and get what we want, and it's totally different. And like, it can be really disheartening. Like, you have this dream, especially like I talk to people all the time who land their dream job, and then a year later, they are like, I'm dying. This job is killing me. I hate it, and that's hard because you have this just vision of what the job's going to look like, and then it falls apart. And then you have to think about leaving. And I know that part is really hard, but you don't have to be obsessed with what you're going to look on the paper. You don't want to be obsessed with how you're going to look on a piece of paper, because ultimately you're going to stay in a state of struggle and suffering with your job. I have been in some interviews where they questioned like my job hopping and like having a lot of short stints. So the good thing is for graphic designers is that there's a lot of contract work, and in the creative industry, it's not really unusual to hop around. Especially when I started, like going into the 2000s, and there was just like so much work out there, but companies were changing all the time. And it was very common to go from freelancing to permanent to freelancing to permanent. Like, flipping around was not unusual. And I was definitely doing a lot of that. Sometimes I just lost my job because of, companies closing down, or they lost clients or things like that. And sometimes I just couldn't do the 9 to 5 anymore, and I chose freelancing. So I do remember being in one interview, like pretty early on in my career. I had ended a job or lost a job. I'm not sure whereabouts this happened or like what part of my career this happened, but it was early on. And I'm in a job interview, and there was 2 men, and one of them just had a vibe to him. He was a bit snarky, a little bit critical. I think he wanted to go work at a fashion company or a fashion magazine, but wasn't there and was maybe not too happy about that. Like, that was just his vibe. And he looked down at my resume and he's like, so, and I'm not really good at doing voices, but this was kind of his style. It's like, so why are you freelancing right now? Are you just looking for more flexibility? And the way he said it this was my interpretation, but I felt like he was recognizing that, I'd lost a job, or like I was trying to find work, but I couldn't. So I'm just freelancing in the meantime to just make ends meet. Not untrue, but it was a little condescending the way he said it to me. He was kind of laughing, like a little snarky laugh going on. And I think I just brushed it off and I said, yeah, this is just, I've been trying different companies and seeing what I like. And it's been really fun I probably said something like this. It's fun to, try different agencies and see what's a great fit. I mean, I'll talk and justify any decision in my career. I don't know. I'm sure I said something along those lines. But if I remember correctly, I think I really did just need a job at the time and was just like trying to find something. Anyway, so that's been one time where they maybe questioned why I wasn't working full time. And there have been recently, in just January of this year, there was a job that came up that I saw online, and I did apply to it, and it was more of a creative job because it was a really interesting company. I really liked the company, and I was like, oh, I'll just apply and see what happens. Not sure whether I wanted to work full-time somewhere, but I'm a very curious person. I'll explore. The company really fascinated me. It's kind of in the health industry. And they got back to me within 3 hours of applying. So I had some job interviews with them, and they really grilled me on my past. And like they started going through all the jobs on my resume, what I'm doing now. And ultimately, I do think that my freelancing, my doing multiple different things, having done career coaching and graphic design, and I think there was almost too much for them to get their head around. And I do believe, my thoughts are that they didn't think I would be fully committed to their company and to their role, which maybe is true, maybe isn't. I don't know how that experience would have gone had I potentially gone to this company. Now, I was never going to go to the company once I figured out what the salary was. It was just ridiculously low. But I did really admire, and I still do admire, the company and what they're doing. But I noticed that they were looking at me like I was a flight risk. And I totally get it. And I have had throughout my career those moments where people have questioned me moving around. So if you go through my LinkedIn, you'll see like there's a lot of different jobs there. And some of them are like 3 months. Like when I went to the shopping channel, I stayed 3 months. When I worked at different roles at Rogers, I would sometimes be there just like 6 months or a year. So again, in my industry, it's kind of more normal as opposed to other industries. But it has sometimes been difficult to speak to. But I would absolutely not do anything differently. I would not, because again, staying at a job that you're really miserable in just for the sake of staying in the job makes no sense whatsoever. So back to this idea of staying somewhere 4 years. That is crazy. That is wild. That is just something that we have, a rule that we have imposed on ourselves. And I really encourage you to think about what rules are you imposing on yourself, not just with your career, but in general, that you have to do things a certain way. And I have really been diving into questioning the rules that I've been coming up with. Like, what are these things that I think I should be doing, that I should not be doing? Everything. And this is a pretty fun space to be in, because then you just get to really, well, it's fun and it's kind of crazy because you can dismantle beliefs. And once you start dismantling things that you've believed in, like your world does kind of crumble a little bit. It's like that moment where potentially that person's like, wow, I don't actually have to stay in a job 4 years. Like, where did that come from? And what does that mean? Well, what that means is you now can change directions. You now can change jobs. And now you have to start looking for a job, putting in that time and energy, which I know is exhausting. I think the best part about finding a new job is not having to look for a job. Like, forget the actual job that you're going into. It's the fact that you no longer have to apply to jobs, go on LinkedIn, Indeed, all the things that are just like, ugh. And I say this as someone who, has had to spend a lot of time on those platforms for clients and for the work I do. But I mean, after about 10 minutes on LinkedIn, I am so done. I am just done. It's just not my place to hang out, but it's a really effective tool. So I appreciate it. But so yeah, once you decide that you can leave a job, it becomes a little bit overwhelming potentially, because then you actually have to make a move, right? And that is hard, because one of the main reasons I see people hesitant to leave a job actually is because they don't want to leave the people they work with. This actually comes up all the time. Most places, you're going to find some great people to work with. I have actually made a friend, at least one friend from every single job that I've worked at, and I'm still friends with them. Like jobs from 20 years ago, I still have friends. So you're going to meet these amazing people, and leaving a job can often mean leaving amazing people, right? So I remember having a conversation with my friend's sister who was working in nonprofit. This is before I was a career coach, but I just loved talking to people about their jobs and their strategy for moving or changing jobs. And she was really underpaid. Now, a lot of people in nonprofit are underpaid. She was really struggling. And she's like, I really don't know how to leave this job because I just love the people so much. Like, we're just so close and I just love seeing them every day. And I said to her, when you go to a new job, you're going to meet new people that you love. Like, I can almost guarantee it. You're going to meet amazing people in your next new job. And she's like, yeah, that's true. And she texted me the next day and she's like, I really thought about what you said, and that just made so much sense. I was so consumed with what I was losing and what I was letting go of, these friendships, which of course you can still stay friends once you leave a job. I know it's different. She's like, I didn't even think about all the new friends I'm going to make and all these new people I'm going to work with and all these new experiences. Like, I was so focused on what I'm letting go of and leaving. And that's a really helpful mindset, is if you can get into the potential joy of what could be coming next. And that's hard though, especially if you're in a job that you don't like. Thinking about what the positive things could be in a new job is hard because you're kind of already dragged down. You're not in a great headspace. You're going to worry, is it going to be the same shit, different day? I mean, that comes up a lot. Every job is different and most workplaces are different in some way, shape, or form. And the people is a huge factor in that. But you got to look at the potential amazing things that could happen, the amazing people you could meet, and not just think about what you're letting go of. That's extremely helpful when you're considering making a move, because you want to have something like a shining light to kind of guide you and be excited about, and the potential of that. So that's another way to get excited about leaving a job you're in, even if you've only been there for a short while. And I need to reiterate this as well. So many people go into a job and want to leave right away. Like, they're unhappy instantly. They took the job because they had to, because it just sounded good. It is so common for people to take a job and then realize it's not a good fit. And that is okay. How are you going to know? It doesn't matter how much due diligence you do, if a job or a company or a role is going to be a good fit until you try it. And so back to that story of me working at the shopping channel, and I have a podcast episode about this as well. I was at the job like 2 weeks and I was looking for a new job because I knew that it was not sustainable. It's not like I didn't like the work, but the workload was completely unsustainable and it was 11-hour days. Now, when I went into job interviews after that, that's all I said to people. I was like, the workload is unsustainable and it's 11-hour days and there's a commute. I think that's pretty reasonable to say. And I was also being transparent about, I'm looking for some kind of work-life balance. Does that really exist? Not too sure. I'm not hearing too many great stories these days. But I also, once in a while, hear someone who's, at a job where they can leave and they feel good about it and they don't have to stay past 5 o'clock, whatever. But you get to decide what's working for you and what is not working for you. That is the bottom line. You cannot stress about what it's going to look like on LinkedIn, what it's going to look like on your resume. If people are going to think you're flaky, you cannot stress about that. And yes, if you job hopped every single place, or every 5-6 months, 10 times in a row, that's going to be difficult. But a lot of the time, it's also not someone's fault. I worked with someone who was in tech, and the tech market is so wild right now. It's like the wild, wild west. People are moving around, hopping around, companies are closing, all these things are happening. So no one's really batting an eyelash when, people are moving around a bit. But I did remember working with this HR professional who was in tech and lost 3 jobs within 2 years. So 3 roles were eliminated within 2 years span at 3 different companies. And oh my gosh, I felt for this person because either the company downsized, company closed down. She just lost 3 jobs in 2 years. Brutal, right? And so a huge part of that was the mental game of building her back up, building her up so that she feels confident to go into the marketplace. Plus, there's so much fear, as to whether she was going to lose a job again, especially if she stayed in the tech industry. And, we can't guarantee, no one can guarantee that you're going to find this perfect, stable job. I know people look for stability. You can try your best, but we actually have no control over what a company's going to do with their staff. And that's really hard, but that's why you need to be resourceful, keep networking and connecting, and always be looking out for new opportunities. But the point is that she had to go looking for a new job, didn't want to, and then had to explain on these interviews, having lost these jobs. Now, in her case, it really was legitimately just cutback after cutback after cutback, and she was just on the unfortunate end of that. So in a way, it's kind of easier to explain. It doesn't feel good, but it's easier to explain. Now, when you're leaving a job because you actually are just miserable, you do have to be strategic how you explain it. You obviously never want to talk badly about the company, the role you had, or the people you were working with a couple exceptions. I have had to be transparent about my toxic boss situation at my cosmetic company in a couple interviews. But for the most part, you're not talking about that. You're really just explaining how the role was not what you were looking for. It didn't satisfy you. It wasn't what you were looking for at this moment in your career. And you keep it top line and you keep it simple. Back to that example of that person not being able to find collaboration. That's a great reason. So everyone was working very siloed, and I'm looking for a company and a role where I can do more collaboration because that's what really excites me. So the point of this, again, is leave your job. Leave your job if you're not happy. Now, strategies as to finding a job, that's a whole story. But this idea that you need to stay at a job a certain amount of time makes zero sense. Is just someone making it up. Someone out there is posting about it. I don't know. They're just making up these rules and regulations. And you don't have to stay at your job. Even if you've been there for 12 days, as I talked about that one woman, 6 months, a year, if you feel that it is time for you to move on and there might be something better for you, I just want you to remember that you have full permission to move on. There could be something, well, actually, there is something amazing out there for you, even if you don't know what it is. And of course, you're not going to really know what it is because you don't know what you don't know, right? So you have to have a little bit of faith that there's something better for you out there. And the first piece of this puzzle, making that step, is just that permission, saying that it's okay for me to leave. I don't care what my friends think. I don't care what my family might think. I don't care what my employer thinks. And I just want to touch on that, is that so many people feel bad for leaving a company so soon, like especially if they've just been there a few months. Okay, well, when you leave your job, 2 days later, they're not going to be thinking about the fact that you've left, really. Their HR person's going to post a job, they're filling it, that's it. They're not lamenting over you leaving. I'm sorry, they're just not. They're not thinking about it. This is a business, and yeah, you might have been amazing at your job, but you are completely replaceable. So that sounds harsh, but you want to be committed to a company, for sure, while you're in your role. But blind loyalty makes no sense. And you need to put your needs first, what's in your best interest, because a company is always going to do what is in their best interest. So you need to do what is in your best interest, self-preservation, and that might mean leaving the job shortly after. You can leave on good terms. You're not necessarily burning a bridge. It's nothing personal with the company. You don't have to leave in a blaze of glory. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You can just quietly go because it's not a great fit. And the feeling bad is self-imposed. You do not have to feel bad about leaving a job that's not good for you. It's no different than staying in any kind of relationship that's not good for you. Why would you do that? You wouldn't. You would stay. You would leave, right? But I think we're kind of programmed to have extreme loyalty to companies. And again, I believe in being committed, accountable, responsible. But I'm always going to personally put myself first. That is the game. That's my game, is putting myself first when it comes to my career and what's going to make me happy. And yeah, Rogers, Google, all these companies, they do not care about you once you've walked out the door at all. They're just not. So we need to remind ourselves about that. Really, you owe them a good job while you're in your job and at your desk and doing your work. They owe you a paycheck. That is where it really ends. This is a transaction. You do work for a paycheck. You do work for a paycheck. You don't owe them anything else. You really don't actually owe any company loyalty. I don't know if that's going to trigger some people or again, I'm the most committed, responsible, accountable person. I think that's actually been the cornerstone of my career is that everyone knows that I'm going to get what I say I'm going to do done. I never miss a deadline. But I'm never going to sacrifice my mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health by with staying in a job that is killing me. I'm just not going to do that. Easier said than done, because sometimes we do have to stick it out and stay at a job just until we find something else. I'm not just saying everyone quit their jobs, and I'm not a big believer in that jump and the net will appear. That works for certain people that have a very high risk tolerance. That is not the plan for everybody, because a lot of the times if someone just jumps and takes a big leap and quits their job, they're going to go into freeze mode and they're actually going to have a really hard time finding a job. So not everyone can just, blindly take blind faith and quit their job. So this episode is a reminder to put yourself first. There are no rules and regulations when it comes to how long you have to stay in a job. If you're miserable, leave, right? And remember and try and believe that something better is out there. Something good will come your way. I'm proof of that. I've found jobs and opportunities in some dark moments, even when I didn't think I would. I've also worked with so many people who have found amazing opportunities in dark moments or after they've lost 3 jobs in a row. And think about what's in your best interest. I think we're always going to go back to this point on this show. What is in your best interest? What's going to make you happy? And your career is your career. Make of it what you will. Take care, guys. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so, so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.